Part of my success has been able to catch an opportunity when it presented itself. What has allowed me to do that has always been my education. While I'm not the best chemist, I'm not the best biologist, I think the combination of having both backgrounds, including the engineering, is basically what has allowed me to do what I do. People who just know chemistry wouldn't be able to do what I do. People who just know business wouldn't be able to do what I do. I'm not better than either of them, but I know just enough to be dangerous in everything.
Chau.
Hi.
Welcome to Saturday State of Mind.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on. I looked things up earlier. You and I either met or started working together in February of 2020. So I was thinking about it a little bit and wondering if it was you that gave me COVID.
Definitely not me, because I didn't get COVID until after COVID was done.
Well, you could have been a carrier. We don't know. Could have been on a sleeve or something.
In Wuhan in September before the outbreak.
I knew there was something to this.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Why were you in Wuhan?
We have two factories there.
You know he can't tell you that.
Yeah, right. Something about a secret facility. Like, don't worry about it. You two factories.
Definitely know the life market.
Yeah.
But what's crazy, right? You say you can know somebody for 5 years, but how well you know them, especially in the business sense, can be just pretty surface level, right?
Right.
So, like, we're really looking forward to exploring who really is Chau. Where does he come from? Where is he going? That sort of deal.
Okay.
So,
you mean like my bio?
I'd love to start with your origin story. Can you paint a picture of where Chau is from and what your childhood was like?
Let's see. I was born in Lima, Peru, which back in the 60s was one of the biggest cities in South America. My father was a corporate lawyer. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And then there was political upheavals. So we went from upper middle class to poor. Then my parents got divorced.
So are one or both of your parents Peruvian?
They're both Peruvian.
They are?
Well,
Okay.
actually, they're both Chinese living in Peru.
Okay. When did they leave China to go to Peru?
My grandparents left China when the Red Chinese took over China.
Okay. That's
So
a good reason.
your parents were born in Peru?
My parents were born in Peru, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, so
their whole
my
life
father
Peruvian.
spoke Chinese, but my mother never did.
Now, was that a big destination for people fleeing China?
Not a big destination. It was a destination, not Red China.
Okay. Yeah.
My mother alluded that my grandfather was one of the last ones leaving mainland China when the last port was taken over.
Yeah. Because I have to imagine at a certain point it got difficult to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
She jokes that he went into the wrong boat because obviously he was supposed to stay in either Taiwan or someplace closer and end up in Brazil, actually, out of all places.
Okay.
And then from Brazil, he migrated to Peru.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good for those guys.
Yep.
Okay.
You have any siblings?
I have one brother and one half brother.
Okay. All right.
And so you were in Peru until what age?
I came to the U.S. when I was 15.
15.
Yeah.
So you spent a good amount of time there.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Lima?
Well, when I turned 7, my parents got divorced. And then my mother decided that she wanted to leave Peru.
Okay.
So she came to the U.S. when I was 11. And I lived in the northern part of Peru with my aunts for the next 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can I ask, are you multilingual then?
I speak Spanish kind of slow because I haven't practiced it in a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously English. I studied a little bit of German and a little bit of Chinese.
Okay. A little bit of Chinese?
Enough to get me food and get me to the hotel.
I was going to say, if you spent some time in Wuhan, like maybe a couple words to
Yeah,
get
just
by.
a few words. I wouldn't call myself proficient with it.
Sure.
What would be like one of your biggest standout memories of growing up in Lima prior to coming to the United States? Just either with your parents, your family?
Most something. I mean, nothing unusual. Just normal life. Kid getting into trouble most of the times.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do to get into trouble?
Oh, all sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I probably like to cook, because the idea of timeout was spend time with a grandmother.
Okay.
And I spend a lot of time with my grandmother.
What did she like to cook?
All sorts of things, Chinese food, Peruvian food, just cooking in general.
Now, do you have an affinity for either one of those cuisines all these years later?
I can cook everything from French to Spanish to German.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Are you the cook in your house?
Yes, but I like fancy cooking. Mm-hmm. So we both share the cooking parts.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check with Janine later to find out how much actual cooking Elle does.
Right.
Or I do more of the cooking than she does.
Okay.
What is your go-to dish if if the queen or some member of royalty was coming over tonight for dinner and you could get whatever ingredients you need, what would you make?
Something fancy, I'll probably go beef bourguignon.
Nice.
Yeah. Scalloped
all right.
potatoes. I love scalloped potatoes. It's a lot of cheese.
Super. Yeah. So you came here at 15. Was it a culture shock coming to the United States?
Yeah, it was. Obviously, I didn't speak any English.
Yeah.
So that was rough.
So you hadn't learned any English before when you were in Peru, or not? No.
Whatever you learn in school,
Sure. Okay.
so nothing specific, not enough to maintain a conversation. My first few years, it sounded like a commercial because I learned watching TV.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so that was rough. And going to school because the school year in Peru the summer is inverted.
Oh,
Right,
Right.
were in southern hemisphere, so we finished school, and I was supposed to start back in whatever, and I got here halfway through would have been my sophomore year. Also in Peru, you go to school for 11 years. You don't go to school for 12 years.
oh wow.
So I was supposed to be theoretically a senior, but instead I came half year, so I was a sophomore. So
I feel like coming back to Peru, I'm not doing 2.5 more years of school.
in theory, I was held back a year. So I was one of the oldest ones graduating from my class.
And I'm sorry if I missed it. Where in the United States did you move?
Oh, Brewster, New York.
Brewster. Okay. And this was with your mom?
With my
Because
mom.
your parents split.
Correct.
And both
And mom
siblings?
had been here for a little bit too.
Okay.
Yeah, my blood brother.
Okay.
Okay. Very nice. So what was it like transitioning into American high school or culture? Do any stories stand out, or were there things that you had to overcome or change?
Well, besides the language barrier, of course, the grading in Peru is 0 to 20, which you would think converting from 0 to 100 is just multiplied by 5.
Sure.
But it's not that way. We are not given grades as A plus, A minus, or anything like that. A good grade is a 16.
Yep.
I was in top of my class and I had 117. Okay, so when you multiply that by 5, that gives you what, an 80 something?
Yeah.
Right. So they all thought that, what, an 80 compared to 100, I don't speak the language. So they basically, in New York, you have different levels, like the Rangers level, the advanced level. And so they put me at the lowest level. It took them a month to figure out that I was in the wrong spot, especially everything we had to do with science and math.
Right.
Yeah, English, I stayed in the lowest level possible. But history, world history is the same down there as it's up here. American history, obviously I was a little behind.
Yeah.
But math, science, computer science, I was actually better than some of my teachers.
Wow.
Yeah. So by the end of my 3 months of sophomore year, they finally moved me by my junior year to the correct classes.
Okay. So it took a little bit for the adjusting to happen.
Right.
How was your mom able to swing all this, being in a new country with two kind of sounds like pain in the neck boys, right?
Well, she had been here for 4 years. So that's
Okay.
how long it took us to get green cards.
But you described her back in Peru. Was she a stay-at-home mom there?
She was. And then when she got divorced, obviously she had to become the breadwinner.
Yeah.
So she started a small little company making baby clothing.
Okay.
Yeah, my house was near a hospital, a maternity hospital.
Okay.
So she got a contract with one of the stores, and it was handmade baby clothing. And I started to work in it. I actually can knit, crochet, and that kind of stuff. I used to help her out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got a lot of skills, Al. This is getting really interesting.
Totally useless skills now, but yeah.
I will say back in the day, Mike used to do some cross stitching with me.
No kidding.
It's true.
I was never going to admit that
Well, I'm
in
admitted
any
it here
context,
now.
but I guess I have to now.
Yeah.
Right.
You made a couple cool things. There was a whole bamboo.
I'll try anything a couple times.
Yeah.
For sure.
You liked it. Let's sit there and hang out and cross stitch.
Yeah. Every time I was in trouble, they would give me stuff to do. So I can macrame, for example, stuff
Yeah.
that would take a very long time to do. It just,
You're a Renaissance man.
yeah.
Okay. Is there anything about, say, these high school years that stands out as something that you experience that might be, say, alien to kids today?
No internet. Everything that has to do with the internet, no phones, meet up with somebody. Well, so
How did you find people?
you
back
either trust that they were going to show up, which, as a teenager, you're not the most reliable person on earth to begin with. And that's just about it. You're just...
Any good stories about growing up, like in the United States, first couple of years, how your family either, bonded or did things for fun?
Well, the first few years, my mom was always busy working. She sold her company to come here, and she started to work as a house sitter. How do you call it? Nanny, I guess.
Babysitter.
Right, babysitter. She worked for a wealthy family in Cantito Farm in Bedford, New York. In the summer, I used to help with the horses. They had a barn and clean stalls and kind of stuff. So mostly she was pretty busy. She worked very long hours. I used to have to pick her up at the train station, when work was over. That's how I got into sports. Occupied my time and it wasn't work. So I started to play sports. And then drinking beer.
Okay. We'll get into that, Al.
And it stopped the sports. So you were playing sports when you were in high school?
Yeah. In Peru, I mostly played soccer. When I came to the U.S., I played 1 year of junior varsity and then 1 year of varsity, my only 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But Americans back then played different type of soccer than we used to play. So I was always in the wrong spot. So anyway.
There's a theme with you as a child that you're always in the wrong position.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it growing up in an immigrant family? I think somewhat stereotypically, people think that, especially Chinese mom, it was either like strict tiger mom stuff. Was it like that? Or was mom a little bit more lenient or distracted because of her work?
Oh, mom was lenient.
Okay.
In certain things. Other things were not. Like, I have plenty of alone time. She stayed out of my business for the most part. But certain things she would not give up. I had to study. I had to, when I got an earring, she went berserk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was a hard no. I never seen her cry.
Was
She
it just a
started
little
to
stud
cry.
or was it like a cool, like George Michael, like
No,
dangly?
just a tiny little stud.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, she was not pleased.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like,
Did you take it out or did you?
oh no, I was taking my foot down.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so I
cool.
kept it.
Okay.
Eventually I took it out because it made no sense to me. But anyway,
You were over it.
yeah. Once the shock wore off, I think it was done. Yeah. Normal.
So what was the next step for Al after high school?
Well, went to Cornell.
I don't know if I've heard of Cornell. Is that a good school?
Yeah, I love how he's like, I was in this class, I wasn't no good, they put me in another class,
Yeah.
And then I went to Cornell. It's just, that was a jump.
Yeah.
That was a jump right there.
That was a very casual drop, Al.
So I
Then you went
guess
to
you
Cornell.
really were overachieving in these lower level classes if you got accepted into Cornell.
True.
Yeah, right. In what, 2 years, 3 years? You must have landed with made a mark in high school to get that acceptance. Yeah.
It's funny. I had the highest grade in the state for the Regents exam that 1 year I took it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In physics.
Okay.
Should we talk maybe a little bit about the American education system and how Al comes here basically not knowing a lick of English, and in 2 years he is like more knowledgeable than everyone else in New York?
Sure, we can share this video with the consulate in Peru, and they can, probably use it a little bit.
Get some attaboys there. When you went to Cornell, what was your major?
I started as electrical engineering.
Okay.
And then I moved to mechanical engineering. Then I moved to civil engineering, chemical engineering.
Wow.
And then I dropped out.
Okay. Was there no more engineering?
Yeah, I was running out of engineering. The reason that I went to Cornell is because they all saw my grades. Math is good, science is good. But they never bothered to ask whether I liked it.
Sure.
So all the bouncing around is because you were trying to find your place?
Right. It's like, and then to
it.
realize that 2.5 years, I'm not that smart, apparently. It took me 2.5 years to figure out that I didn't like engineering.
Okay. So you dropped out your junior year?
Dropped out, yeah.
Or between?
I was there for the first 4 semesters, took a semester off, tried to go back.
Wasn't
Didn't
right
take. It was engineering that I didn't like. And it would have taken me way too long to transfer to another school.
Okay.
So I just went to WestCon.
What did mom have to say about all this?
Oh, she was not happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically I had a lot of scholarships going to Cornell. And well, if I changed schools, I had to pay. WestCon was relatively cheap.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so what did WestCon have that Cornell didn't?
It was closer to home. It was a new start. And the competition was a lot less. I'm inherently lazy. I don't like to study and I don't like to work. That is honest truth. When I was in high school, I could be one of the top students without really trying too hard. Cornell, that's not the same.
You got to try a little bit once you're at Cornell.
Yes. Some of my roommates were geniuses. No, for whatever reason, we all gravitated to the same dorm. Bunch of engineers.
Yep.
Couple pre-meds. I measured myself. I could see that I would have to put a lot more effort just to keep up.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was lazy and immature.
Was that your favorite? Was that your favorite part of Cornell? Was like the relationships that you formed with other people in your dorm?
Yeah. I mean, made some really good friends, but I'm not very good keeping relationships.
Sure.
Yeah, so out of sight, out of mind kind of.
And I give you credit. It might have been Malcolm Gladwell or somebody that remarked about how a lot of really, really smart people end up going to elite schools and feel like failures just because their peer group is also really elite and smart.
Right.
Whereas if you just go to a smaller pond or where there's less competition, you can still be at the front of the pack, right?
Right.
So I give you credit for recognizing that because a lot of people in your position probably just would have really gotten into beer or just, I don't know.
Oh, I did get into beer.
Yeah.
I drank quite a bit in school.
Okay.
I used to joke that I got my tuition's worth. In alcohol.
So when you switched gears to WestCon, what did you then begin studying?
I went for chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah, but the issue with a smaller school is that high advanced level classes are not offered every year. So I managed to graduate in what it should have been 4 years in 6.
Okay.
Yeah, but by the time I graduated, I had a double major and no extra credits. Yeah. Normally you graduate with 120. I had 170 something credits.
Wow.
Also, I didn't want to work.
Sure.
So as long as
just putting that off for as long as possible.
As long as I stay in college, I don't have to pay my loans.
So speaking of not wanting to work,
Yes.
let's talk about maybe your first foray into the workforce. So you helped out mom a little bit. We don't have to talk about like early high school jobs or whatever, but let's like when someone says, what was your first job, say out of college?
Oh.
What would that have been for you, Al?
First real job came by accident. So I applied for a scholarship, a science scholarship, and Novo Nordisk was offering one. So they gave me the scholarship and I went to say thank you and they offered me a job. I had no job. So I said, okay, I'll take it. So
you're like, I'm here just submitting a thank you card.
Yes,
just
essentially.
Offer. Okay.
So I worked in the enzymes lab. Novo Nordisk is an insulin company, but as a side business, they used to have industrial enzyme group. So I joined that and we were trying to do testing on applications for these enzymes industrial applications for these enzymes, like amylases, other than insulin. So I started to do chemistry because of that. My major was obviously chemistry, so I worked on that. Then when I finally was close to graduating, I took the job full time. It was supposed to be kind of like an internship, and then turned into a real job. And then in the 80s, they decided to consolidate and move. So I had to change another job. Most of my friends were going across the street to Boehringer Ingelheim. So, hey, follow the crowd. I applied there and got a job. So I worked then at Boehringer. After Boehringer, then one of my friends got another job someplace else and asked me to apply to this other job. So I went to Kenworth. And then from Kenworth, I started my own business.
Was your friend getting referral bonuses every time you followed him?
Oh, it wasn't the same friend. It was different friends. Yeah, but they should have, yes.
Feel like I know a quick way to make an easy 1,000 right here.
So when you decided to go into business for yourself, about how old are you at this point?
How old was I? 2006. So,
okay.
What is it, 12 years ago?
I'm not as smart as you, Al. You can probably do this math faster.
So anyway, 40-something.
Okay. Okay.
And your whole time, working in kind of the chemistry, biotech sphere, was that all in New York, Connecticut area?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were living
It's funny. I moved from Peru, thousands of miles. And then since I haven't moved much further than 20 miles until I moved to New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but at some point on this journey, you must have met Janine.
Yes.
Okay. She's not here to represent herself. So you got to do a really good job here, Al. Be careful.
Sure. It's the part you cut out.
How did you meet Janine?
When I transferred to Westcon, we were in the same classes.
No kidding.
Yeah, originally she was going to be a pharmacy major.
Okay.
She had graduated with a communications degree and went back to school for pharmacy.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only reason I caught her eye is because I used to pass out during class all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And, when you start to snore, people kind of pay attention to you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, is this like you have some kind of like medical issue and you can't stay awake, or is it all the beer? Why were we falling asleep in class?
The late nights trying to get to class.
Okay.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
So she's like, who is this super hot, passed out guy?
Snoring man.
Yeah, snoring. Yeah.
So who approaches who?
We had common friends.
Okay.
So we didn't start dating until much, much later. We had been friends for a very long time, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before you graduated, though.
Well, that's the thing. I had not graduated because I needed one extra credit on one class that was only offered every other year.
Sure.
So I was...
Did you really need that additional credit? It seems like you had so many banked.
No, but
For the major.
I had all
the major.
my bio requirements complete, but a chemistry major has more prestige. And I needed that for the chemistry major. And if I had graduated with the bio one, then it would have counted as a second degree. So you have to get another 30 credits.
Oh, Lord.
Already I'm on 160 something at that point.
Right.
So
Not just here collecting credits.
yeah, at that point it makes no sense.
So do you remember your first date with Janine?
Our first date.
Yeah. Because she probably does, and she's going to review your answer later.
Yeah, Tuxedo Junction. We're both pretty hammered, actually.
Okay.
What's Tuxedo Junction?
It was the nightclub, the local nightclub in Denver.
Okay. Very romantic, Al.
Well, it wasn't at all. We had actually been living together. We had an apartment with two other people, so it was the four of us.
Okay.
Yeah, she had the room below me. I had the room upstairs. Amy and Marcus.
So you guys were roommates before you started a relationship?
Yes, yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Do you feel there was a moment when you knew that she was going to be the one that you married?
We've always been very comfortable with each other. I wouldn't say it's a moment.
Okay.
It wasn't like a eureka.
Okay.
But, we've always been very good friends. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So one day it was just kind of like, you want to get married?
Yeah, pretty much one of those. Yeah.
So somewhere early 40s, you decide you're going to start a business.
Yes.
Okay. Is this with some of the people that you had already been working with? Were you going to go break off on your own? What's the setting there?
Accident.
Okay.
Yeah. So I am horrible with office politics. I see things very black and white, and I don't like playing games. There was a lot of turmoil in the company. The company had grown. When I joined, I was in the technical side, I was the fourth guy in. By then, it had grown to 6, and they started to structure in a way that when I originally started, you had a hands on everything. But now they wanted to separate everything into different departments. And it was basically a grab bag of who does what, when, and what are the deliverables from one group to the other one. So that created a lot of conflict within the company. So when I lost the politics, the other guy had a better ear to the owner.
Yeah.
But it was bad. You got to a point where it was just not pleasant to work there anymore.
Sure.
I left. The sales guy left. Marco left. The son of the owner left.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
That says a lot right there.
Yes. Right? Actually, Pete, which was the son of the owner, he did not go back to the company until just recently. And it's been, almost 10 years, 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I originally interviewed with a German company, but I would have had to move from Brewster from Connecticut to New Jersey because that's where they were based. They offered me the job, and then the owner of my previous company sent a cease or desist letter because of a non-compete. Oh. Even though we weren't going to be competing, really. I mean, the two businesses had a lot of overlap, but you can have overlap, but not on the same products, right? So all I had to do is not touch products that I knew Kenworth was going to be working on.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, that kind of scared the other company a bit, and that got me mad.
Yeah.
So if I can't do it for someone else, I'll do it for myself, damn it.
Sure.
So that's how I started.
Okay.
So you started your company out of spite, mostly.
Yeah. Well,
I like it.
they closed my door, so.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I started.
That flash of anger in your eyes when you just said I got mad, that was actually kind of cool. I was intimidated.
We're going to zoom in on that.
So what did you decide to do in this moment? What was the next step?
Financing. Obviously, I had zero cash flow. So.
And what were you going to do? What was this business going to be?
I was going to compete directly with my old company.
And what would that mean? Like, what was that company doing?
Develop projects, develop pharmaceutical. What I do is, in general, there's a generic drug going out of patent. And a drug going out of patent. Everybody is rushing to become the generic, right? What I do is I prepare the active ingredients so somebody else can formulate it into that generic drug.
Got it.
Right? That involves doing the chemistry, doing the regulatory part, so the FDA approves it, do a compliance so you don't kill anybody, all that kind of stuff. And in 2005, 2006, I had managed the office in Shanghai. My previous company had an office in Shanghai, so I knew everybody there. And they themselves, because of the problems we're having in the U.S., was also fracturing in China. I was theoretically sent to China to keep them together. But, when the parents are fighting, the kids also fight. So that didn't work out very well either. Probably one of my failures.
So this business wasn't just sourcing these active ingredients.
No,
it was
we developed them from scratch.
Synthesizing, all of that?
But we don't necessarily get our hands with the chemicals.
Okay.
We contract everything. So we find partners who either they want to develop the drug for themselves and distribute it elsewhere, or we pay for the development itself.
So you'd be like the general contractor getting all this to happen.
Right.
Awesome.
So, that's why I was in Wuhan when the facility is in there.
Okay.
So
no bats, though?
No, we mostly do a small molecules.
Wet markets or anything like that?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
No. So where was I?
You started a company, you had to get financing.
Right. So
And you were mad.
and I was mad.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a fire right there.
One of the guys that had left with me, he was the sales guy, and he had a lot of contacts. So he put me in connection with another German company, Transform, and they financed well, in theory, they were supposed to finance the first 3 years, and I was supposed to develop projects for them to use in Europe. They supported me for 2 years. I was cash flow positive in the first year, so I no longer needed them. But what I promised to deliver, I could not deliver because their requirements, I didn't know this, their requirements are different than what we have in the US. So what I do for the US doesn't really play out well for what they needed. Or if it did, it will require much more money up front. In the US, for example, you can file an application on the promise that you will complete the work, by the time you're ready to market. In Europe, you need everything done. And the last step is hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. So you don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars not knowing if you're going to have a sponsor for your product, right? That's just too much. So in the US, it's relatively cheaper to do it. And once you have a reputation that you can cross the finish line, people will sign with you. But because of Europe's requirements, that wasn't feasible. They didn't want to put the money, and I didn't want to put the money without knowing that I was going to be successful. So products for Europe never really worked out. So I just repaid them the money with interest of whatever they gave me. And we always end up friends.
How do you think you made that change, though? Because you described in your academic years, you didn't super like working really hard. You'd fall asleep during class. Speaking as a fellow entrepreneur, right? It's a lot of work running a business. And what you're describing seems like an unusual amount of work because you're crossing boundaries for countries and there's all this regulation. So how did you make the switch into an entrepreneur's mindset and have success in getting a business that requires so much work?
I'm very good at delegating.
Okay.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, I think about work all the time, but it's always on my time. Everybody goes to sleep. I'm like, okay, what should I do tomorrow? Kind of thing. Now I work very little, honestly. But when I was first starting it, it was, think about it in the shower.
Right.
But I can do that. Shampoo my head.
Sure.
It's not like I have to be tied to a computer or tied to anything. Even if I had a commute, I could do what I need to do in my head in the car.
Got it.
Probably that's why I like hockey. It's the only place that I don't have to think about anything. Yeah. That's why I like sports.
Were there any difficult years, especially when you first got off the ground?
No, we got lucky right off the bat. Don't know why. We just got lucky. We developed this product, dextrosone.
What was it called?
Dextrosone.
Okay.
It basically, when somebody has chemo, when you put the chemicals they put into you, it kills the tissue. So this is supposed to protect the tissue from dying. Okay. So we developed this for, I can't remember where her company was. Either way, they placed a PO for 2 kilos, $100-something thousand. And we made it. We did everything that we needed to do, and we were ready to deliver. But the company decided that they didn't want to develop this anymore. So now I'm like, I have 3 kilos of this, which is $100,000. You made us make it. He goes, oh, no problem. We'll pay you, but just don't want it. So I got paid.
Right.
And I had the material, and we sold it to someone else.
Right.
So basically, I got right off the bat $100-something thousand to float me. That's why I didn't need the third year of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that has happened to me 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Various amounts. I mean, that one's so the first one, the most significant one that was a little bit bigger and one was a little smaller. Because when they place a PO, in general, they should honor it.
Sure.
I mean, honor it. And for the most part, they do. And the priorities change. I mean, everything takes 6 months to a year to get to the point where you can deliver. So, yeah, priorities change. People get acquired.
The business you have now, it's just an evolution of what you started then back in the early 2000s?
Yep. It's actually an evolution of what my previous company used to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just dawned on me this week as I was preparing for this interview that G&A, right? That's the name of his business.
Yeah.
Does that stand for Gabby and Alex?
That's correct.
That's how dumb I am. Okay. So we can make a pivot here for a second because along this journey, you're also a parent.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like raising 2 kids at the same time where you're doing, you're running this business and you're delegating? What stands out in those early years of trying to juggle those 2 things, especially as it's related to the 2 kids who I know are grown now, right?
Right.
But what was it like back then?
Janine took care of most of that. Yeah. Obviously, I was working from home, so I was the driver for the most part. Yeah. I don't know. I always had fun with my kids. Yeah.
What was it like raising kids, especially, you brought up when you were coming up, no phones, no computers, and all of that stuff was like coming online as your kids were probably just like getting out of diapers, right? For the most part?
Yeah. Actually, I got my first phone because Janine was pregnant and it was due and I was traveling. So we got the little Nokia with a little antenna pull out.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the first one. I'm not necessarily a first adopter when phones were first came out, but I did jump when the first iPhone came in. Ever since, they have always gotten my electronics. So since they were getting my stuff, I couldn't really object to them having it. I don't know if that's what you were trying to get at.
No, I mean, if there would be something I'd try to pull from this moment is, are there any, say fondest memories of being a dad, like either around holidays or vacations, right? If there's something you want to say to embarrass the kids right now, what would be a great Chau family story to share?
Let's see. We lost Alex at the Australia Zoo.
Okay. We're doing pretty good so far.
All right, right there. Didn't have to think that long on that one.
Yeah.
You found him, I take it.
Yes. Well, we didn't truly lost him. We were wondering how long would it take him for him to realize that we're not next to him. It half an hour, almost 45 minutes. He just walked around like he was.
It was good.
Yeah, in the park.
How old was he?
Crowded. Yeah. Gabby, Janine, and I followed him. He never really better than I.
Yeah.
Oh, so this was like a
Doing his own
social
thing.
experiment. You were just
a little
trailing
bit.
him.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Maybe he knew you were there.
Yes.
How old was he at the time?
4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, he's got to look at the animals. You'll find him eventually.
So it took him about 45 minutes before he realized he might have been in imminent danger?
No, we finally got tired of chasing him.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you figure is wrong with him?
I always felt safe, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Gabby, on the other hand, I thought I lost her in a hockey store. I'm looking for new equipment and turn around. There is no Gabby. Oh, no. She was hidden in the racks of clothing, and she thought it was hysterical.
Sure.
Yeah, parent, not so much.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun place to go and hide in those and go lots of parents' heart attacks.
You know what's somewhat typical, Alan, and I know that you and I have talked about this in the past, but a lot of times people who have the kind of success that you have had to deal with a lot of adversity. So coming to a new country, learning a new language, having to support mom's business, none of that sounds particularly fun or easy. But as you raised your own family, you're running a successful business. You're probably able to meet most, if not all of their needs, especially as compared to their peer group. How have you tried to navigate this conundrum, right? That as you make something of yourself, you want to put that same fire in the belly of your children and give them incentive to study hard and work hard. But it can be difficult if they grow up in a household that's, experienced some success. How have you tried to tackle this and put good values into those kids of yours?
Well, definitely not by example, because like I said, I'm a little lazy.
Okay.
Yeah. How specifically? We always consider education is important. It took with Gabby. Alex hates school. He doesn't like to study at all. He'll agree with me.
He likes to wander around.
Yeah.
Okay.
He always likes his own thing. So education never took with Alex. But with Gabby, she always, she is the rule follower in that sense for her school. Alex is a rule follower in a different sense, but not necessarily school.
Do you think you're selling yourself short a little bit, where you said like the kids might perceive you as being lazy? Do you think they actually see you that way?
I don't know. I spend most of the time in the couch. It's actually a funny story. I had gotten hurt playing hockey. I had a pinched nerve in my neck that basically made my arm tingle and in pain. It was a lot of pain. So I was given not bed rest, but something similar to that. And obviously, I'm in pharmaceuticals. So Alex went to school, and one of those, what do your parents do kind of thing, right? So he goes, oh, my dad works from the house and sells drugs.
That's great.
Yeah. So
I mean, he wasn't technically wrong.
yeah, he was not
Did you get a
wrong.
visit from the Department of Social Services?
Yeah, he was not wrong, but I heard it from one of my friends because my best friend that we went to high school together also we moved to Newtown after they did. So our kids were in the same school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen.
So she was like, hey, guess what your son said?
But I would think they would probably have connected some dots. Dad does seem to have a really good work-life balance, but mostly through delegation, right?
Right.
You're because of the way that you've studied and you've applied yourself and the connections you've made it so that you don't always have to be awake at the wheel. You can put other people in that position while you just direct from afar from the couch. Right. Do you think that they've made that connection about you, or do you think they assume other things?
That I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
I will have to ask them.
Yeah. When Gabby comes over.
Al is just so humble, right? I mean, that's what coming. He's like, I wasn't in the right place. Like, I'm not, very motivated. I'm kind of lazy. I think you may be a genius is really what's going on
I'm
here.
just along for the ride. I've always been prepared when the opportunity comes. I've never seen an opportunity come and I'm not being able to catch it. I mean, I suppose that should be my superpower. But that's about it. I mean, the opportunity, I have never really sought the opportunity. They just seem to happen in front of me. I don't know why.
So as we talk a little bit about the future, this is going to be a tough one because I think a lot of people think of the day where they put down like just all the office stuff, they close the laptop and they go golfing, right? You've got a business, though, through delegation that you might be able to run kind of forever, right? So I don't think, Al, are going to have a classic retirement. And in some ways, you're already kind of at least partially retired because you have a pretty incredible work-life balance. I think this would be a great point, to make the point, talk about some of your extracurriculars. We were just talking about how you've passed your pilot's license.
Right.
And so just to be clear, one more time, you were saying it's like the Boy Scouts, you get various merit badges, right? So what badges have you collected and when did this pilot journey start?
Oh, the pilot idea was actually kind of funny too. COVID had just started. Flying in airlines was a pain. Gabs was going to grad school in New York, and Alex is a Marine, was in Paris Island. So figure, hey, it would be nice to be able to fly there, and I can go visit them. I don't see them that often now, so I figure, hey, let's do this. So I started to think about it, and then all of a sudden, both my kids moved to Manchester. Now it takes me longer to drive to the airport than to visit their house.
Okay.
Kind of annoying. So that's how the idea first started. It's taking me a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, partially because it took me a long time to adjust myself. When I'm coming to land, I want to slow down when I'm high, so I have altitude.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually the worst feeling when, how to explain it? You're supposed to flare when you are in ground effect, which means that your plane comes and the runway is putting air into your wings, and so you slow down and then you land, right? I tend to do that at first I tended to do it very high, which means I will run out of speed. And most of my landings at first were kind of hard. And yeah. So it took me a long time to, get the guts to get closer to the ground full speed before I actually do my slow down maneuver.
Yeah.
You got to come in hot, Al. You know what I mean?
Now I actually can come in at every speed and have no problems.
If you want coming hot, just, medium.
It's one of our favorite sayings.
Coming hot.
Yeah. Also, I got a few bad habits when I started to train on.
Is it the drinking?
No, I definitely don't drink before flying.
All right.
But I started my training on the 172.
What is that?
Oh, a Cessna 172.
Okay.
It's a standard training aircraft. There's a 152, a 172, and a 182. So 172 is what most people do for training, right? It's a lighter aircraft, and the nose is really not that heavy. It's a 4-cylinder, right? I bought a 182.
Okay.
The main difference is that the weight of the engine brings your nose much quicker down. One of the habits that I got when I started with 172 is once I'm over the runway, I would just cut the power and let it glide, which makes it for a nice touchdown. On a 182, it's nose heavy. Every time I try to do the same thing, the nose will, which, since I was doing it high to begin with, it makes it a lot worse. So all my muscle memory related to that particular maneuver was wrong, and it took me a while to adjust.
Okay.
Then I am short. Planes are not made for people my height. So the way I drive a car, I like to lean back and extend my legs. Not a problem. In a plane, your eye level has to be a certain point, because as you slow down, you want to lift the nose, except that you can't see over the cowling if you're short. And I lose all my reference to the runway when the nose comes too high. So I have to, this was a bit of pride, I guess, that I wanted to sit back like a normal person, but basically I have to be right into the windshield, essentially, so I can see over it.
Okay. I thought you were going to say booster seat.
I do have a booster seat.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
It took me a while to adjust to that, swallow my pride. Yes, I need a booster seat.
I don't know if you have much pride to swallow. You can fly an airplane, and a lot of people cannot. So, regardless.
Do you enjoy flying?
Oh, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's most fun about it?
There is one maneuver that is recovery from unusual attitudes. What most people get killed is when you close your eyes, or when you're in the clouds, or when it's dark, your eye cues go away. So you feel your balance based on how your ears are behaving. But if you're in a constant turn, for example, your ears equilibrate and they feel like the constant turn is no movement, because the earlobes, the canals in the ears are no longer moving. But when you stop your turn, the ears think that you're going the opposite direction because you are no longer moving, but the ear's still leaning the opposite way now. So most people get disoriented that way. That's why the Kennedy guy died. He thought he was doing one thing, the plane is doing something totally different. So to simulate that, they put you on goggles that you cannot see You can only see the instruments. You cannot see outside. You have to turn your head a little bit angled so your ears get totally out of whack, and your instructor changes the playing attitude rapidly and violently. So your butt goes all over place. You're thinking you're going one way, but you're not. And then they give you the yoke, and you have to recover from that. I find that like a little puzzle.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's kind of cool.
So did they change the way that training was done or licensure requirements because of some of the accidents that have happened kind of with the celebrities or famous people?
Honestly, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I mean, if they're changing the rules, I'm just new. You're just using whatever rules I was given. Yeah.
Never came up in the sky.
Yeah.
How's Janine been with your ever-growing hody here?
Oh,
Does she
another,
worry about you, or is she totally okay with it?
That's another funny story.
Okay.
Yesterday, when I had my license, I texted the family, hey, I passed, right? And then Alex replies, oh, the true test just begins. You have to get mom to fly with you.
Has she not flown with you yet?
No. She says, first I have to get my instrument.
Yep.
And then she'll consider it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's next for you, the instrument?
Yeah, that's the next. Well, I'm almost done with complex. Already have the high powered. The next will be instrument.
Where do you see this all going, Al? What's flying going to look like for you in the future?
Just fun. Want to go get a burger in Denver. Yeah.
Get a burger in Denver?
Denver.
Oh, Denver. Okay.
Yeah. There's a little restaurant hole in the wall in the Denver-Bethel border, though we used to love to go there. So I miss those burgers.
There's a lot of diners and like airport breakfast places at these little local airports, which I didn't even know. Just in our office, we were having a conversation regarding this because there's a really close municipal airport to us down Cape Cod and Chatham.
Mm-hmm.
It has like the best breakfast there. And he's like, yeah, it's like pilot's breakfast. Like you just get up in your plane, you go over, get down and have some breakfast and then go home or get a burger or whatever you want to do. It's pretty neat.
What sort of other aspirations do you have right now for the future with either the business, some of your hobbies here, the family?
Well, Gabby has been big into hiking, mountain hiking, actually. So we have to start training because we're going to do the Inca Trail in August. So we'll see. My knee holds up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, 13,000 feet. So it should be fun.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What else?
If that works, then we want to climb Kilimanjaro. That should be fun.
Okay.
For that one, Janine actually says she will come.
Really?
She'll come for this one.
Yeah, but she wants to do the safari part, not the hiking part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, we're the Saturday people, Al. We talk a lot about living every day like it's Saturday. Mm-hmm. And for some people, that's a bucket list of stuff, you know, trips and things. And sometimes it's more of an attitude or a departure from the workforce. Mm-hmm. How would you define living every day like it's Saturday? What does that mean to the Chau family?
Honestly, for me, no days are different. Holidays are not different. You know, I do whatever I want. Yeah, my day starts with a choice between playing a video game or actually answering emails. And I can do both from my bed. No, I don't have to commute.
You move from the couch to the bed.
yeah, I do. I do go to my computer on my desk eventually when I do have to answer emails. But for the most part, having that choice. That's why retirement is really not that high in my priority list because essentially I'm retired.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I'm going to fully sign off on Jess's assessment of you as being a genius.
I'm not a genius. No.
I know you're a smart dude. What I would want to give you credit for is, and even before we had even met, you had realized something that a lot of Americans really struggle with. And this, of course, is opinionated, right? I think we're going to share this opinion now, but I think a lot of people measure success by the number of, you know, dollar signs and decimal places and things that they have in, say, their bank account or like their nest egg or whatever. But a lot of people who have a lot of money are exceptionally stressed out. Sometimes they have estranged relationships with spouses and kids and that sort of thing. And I've come to, like in my 20 years of being a financial advisor, realize that really wealth is a measure of success, but it really isn't the only measure. In fact, it's probably a secondary or tertiary measure. Oftentimes, I consider the most successful people to have complete and total command of their time. That's really where you can judge a successful or a wealthy person, is what do they do with their time and how much, say, control do they have over it? Right. I don't think I know anybody who has better command over their time than you do, sir. I mean, even when we first met, it's hard to see you being like, when you mentioned that you were angry at that, you know, that old employer, I really have never seen you angry, stressed out. You just always seem to be cool, collected, looking forward to the day and the next day, that sort of thing. And it's pretty exceptional.
Money is a score. You know, yeah, the more money you have, you're winning. But there gets to a point where you don't want to run up the score. What's the point? I don't need that much more. For the most part, I've always lived within my means. You know, it's interesting because I said I was born to the upper middle class, and then the government took everything. So I was poor. I came to the U.S. with about $100 that I had taken 3 years to save, 4 years to save since my mother left to the U.S. So I've known when not having money is, there's no reason to have that much more. I was happy when I was poor. No, I cook my own food. I still do. So, I mean, what else is there? Yes, I drive much nicer cars than I do now. Going on an income trail, you know, that's within what I can do with my bucket list. You know, I suppose if I was poorer, my bucket list would have fewer items. But I mean, I can be better with my money, right? Might as well use it.
Yeah, man. So here we are. We're towards the end of the interview. Al, you are Mr. Saturday, I think. Would you have a final lesson to impart, or maybe some words of wisdom if it were to be, say, your kids to hear them, or maybe grandchildren that you're not yet blessed with, you know, to have the kind of success that you have, to have the kind of lifestyle that you're enjoying? What kind of, you know, wisdom bomb would you drop here? What's Al's summation as to how to live a good Saturday life?
I suppose I don't think there's one thing. I mean, like I said, part of my success has been able to catch an opportunity when it presented itself. What has it allowed me to do that has always been my education. And while I'm not the best chemist, I'm not the best biologist, I think the combination of having both backgrounds, including the engineering, you know, is basically what has allowed me to do what I do. People who just know chemistry wouldn't be able to do what I do. People who just know business wouldn't be able to do what I do. I'm not better than either of them, but I know just enough to be dangerous in everything. I think being well-rounded is the most important thing that I can give anybody, I guess.
I'm not sure if I know anybody better, well-rounded, more well-rounded than you.
Well-rounded physically.
Al, thanks for joining us. This was awesome. We learned more than we even could have possibly have bargained for. What an incredible story.
Sure.
Thanks so much, man.
No.